Hi, everyone, and welcome to another show, the Ultimate Perimenopause podcast. And it is an absolute delight to welcome our friend Diana onto the show here today. So, what I'd like to do, Diana, if that's okay with you, is just go through your bio, and then we can all say hi. But I wanted to get through this because it's really you're a very interesting woman, and you're going through a phase in your life that is absolutely fascinating to me right now. So, I want to introduce you, and then we can get into the really juicy stuff.
Great.
Okay. But I would also like to welcome my co-host, Shauna. How are you, Shauna?
Wonderful. Hi, everyone.
It's so nice to see you, and you're looking so fresh and spring-like today.
It's the haircut.
Isn't it? I think it's the first time we've shown your haircut. For those who are watching on our YouTube channel, Shauna has a new haircut. So I'd strongly suggest, if you're not listening or you're not watching on the YouTube channel, go over and look, because it looks stunning. It's great. So Diana's mission is to reach women who are going through divorce, separation, or breakup to recover from the trauma, recharge their bodies, and reclaim the life of their dreams. And as a holistic nutritional professional, a Reiki master, and wellness coach, Diana brings life experience of being in a 20-year marriage with 3 children and having to endure a 5-year separation. That's a long time. Her journey through the grief, loss, sense of abandonment, and fear have played a significant role in shaping her heart-centered coaching method. She's helped hundreds of women recover from trauma, repair their bodies, and reclaim their lives. She's presently writing her first book. Yay! Oh, can't wait to see that. It's called Crushing Life: How to Fall in Love with Your Life After Divorce. Diana is also passionate about helping women find their inner resilience and fall in love with their lives again. If that's not a great, sort of mission statement, I don't know what is, because that sounds amazing. So
thank you.
Welcome, Diana. How are you?
Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. I am really pumped to be on your podcast this morning. It's so exciting to be able to reach out to your audience.
Well, you're an amazing woman, so I can't wait to dive in and get some questions. And for those that listen all the way to the end, Diana's going to highlight some of her upcoming events, and she has some freebies to give you. So we'll put them in the show notes, but make sure you listen to the end too, because we'll be talking about that. So let's dive right in, and I'll go with the first question, if that's okay with you, Shauna.
Go for it. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we have a big question here about loneliness. And do you think that there's more loneliness sort of around the perimenopause, menopause phase than sort of your 20s and 30s, and then maybe even into your 60s and 70s? It seems to be, because we're in it, it seems to be very prevalent right now. But I'm just wondering if that's what you're seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such a great question, because this is such a tricky phase in our lives when we're going through perimenopause and full-on menopause, because it's a huge transition on an energetic sort of soul level. We are going through what's called Saturn return. It's our second Saturn return, where we're actually shifting our whole way of being. We're shifting our focus. Like we're in a major transformation into our wisdom as women in particular. And because of this, like, our ground is kind of shaky, but also, we're at a stage in our lives hormonally, of course, when we go through perimenopause and menopause, where our bodies are kind of in a state of, death in a way. We're saying goodbye to our reproductive years. So we are really dying. Like, our ovaries are starting to shut down. Our hormones are going all over the place, because we're trying to rebalance this new stage of life. And because of that, as you know, and what you talk about, of course, in your podcast and everything you do, it's all about what happens to our body in a chemical way with all of our hormones. So our adrenals get triggered when that happens. Our sympathetic nervous system gets activated. So we're in fight, flight, or freeze. Our stress level goes up. It triggers anxiety and panic and all the beautiful things that comes with that, that I've been going through in the past year, a few months. Overwhelm, fear, We want, like, it's like, what the hell's going on? We should be kind of at a settled stage in our lives, right? No, not really. And when our anxiety gets triggered and our primitive brain starts telling us all these things because our fears are coming up, and we're saying, oh my God, I'm dying, I'm alone, have I achieved what I wanted to achieve? And it brings on huge anxiety and fear, and we tend to kind of push away people who are in our lives because our focus is different, our perspective is different, we're wanting more quality in our lives. We're seeing that certain friendships don't work for us anymore. We could be empty nesters. So of course, that's another reason why loneliness might come up. Our children are going off to college, or they're getting married, they're leaving. And now we really have to look at our spouse and say, who the hell are you?
I can relate on so many levels.
Right. And now your whole relationship is going through a change. Not only are you going through this physical, chemical rebalancing, dying, sort of birth, Saturn return sort of thing. We now have to look at our partner of many, many years and decide, do we still like them? Are we still in the marriage that we thought we were going to be in? So that's a whole other level of loneliness. And also, it's really an interesting time of divorce and breakups as a result of that. So if you're not able to go through this period and work together through the rough times, this is the perfect time where things fall apart on so many levels. So it brings up all kinds of loneliness, all kinds.
And I think that, I don't know if you've read this book, Shauna or Diana, the Red Tent. Have you read The Red Tent?
I actually haven't read it, but I've heard a lot about it.
Mm-hmm. It's an amazing book.
Yeah.
And from what you're saying, it sounds like, and from our experiences, on my experience anyway, we sort of don't have those women in our lives that are around the same age or even older than us who can guide us and tell us it's going to be okay and give us that reassurance that perhaps our mothers or their mothers had. That's what it seems like to me anyway. And I find that it's only now that, I'm being more drawn to the women of my own age and women who are going through or have been through the same experience, but they're still few and far between, I think.
You're absolutely right. We don't live in tribes anymore, and we don't have our communities anymore.
Yeah.
Because we're so isolated. We don't live in our extended families anymore, pardon me, as we did in tribal times, where we could come together as women and share our stories and encourage each other and guide each other. It is that's all part of that Saturn return thing too. It's kind of like, where's my tribe? Where's my wisdom? We have to discover what our own wisdom is. And it's a tough transition when we don't have women in our lives who can help us with that, for sure.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great reason why Shauna and I created this podcast, was because a lot of people were asking these questions and they were not getting the answers or didn't have anywhere to get the answers. So that was a huge catalyst for us.
Yeah, brilliant. Really, really is brilliant, because we need this. We need this as women to support each other.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I find that this perimenopause transition seems to bring things up to a level of urgency where you have to make changes in your life, where you can't just put up and put up and put up. It's like you've moved past the phase of little children that demand all of your attention, and you're not quite in survival anymore. So now you do start to look at your life again and see, who are the people who inspire you and who do you really love to hang out with, and, re-examining relationships. And I agree, this is a time where a lot of relationships do seem to fall apart because you've both, gone living in different directions and haven't really spent the time to reconnect, or you're different people than you were before. And, as women are moving through perimenopause, we are, often hopefully embracing a, more wise and more powerful and, more present state of being, which, can shake up relationships in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, so true. It's so true. Yeah, it is. It is really, and that's part of the work that I do, right, during this age as well. It's huge group of women between 35 and 60 who are going through major divorce and relationship transition, which causes incredible amounts of loneliness because the fears come up like, oh my God, am I never going to have a partner again? Am I going to be alone for the rest of my life? I hear that all the time. It's the number one thing that women fear is being alone. And on the same level, it's kind of this period of our lives, it's actually an important period for us to actually be alone and sort of have the ability to see perspective in our lives. That's part of.
I wonder what that means, actually, hearing you say that. Does it mean physically alone? Does it mean that they don't have somebody financially there with them? Does it mean companionship? Because because I have one friend, Shauna, and actually Diana, you know them too, who absolutely flourishes being on her own. She absolutely loves it. She can go where she wants, when she wants, for however long she wants, and I don't see her yearning for a partner in that sense, but maybe it's the physical sense rather than the financial sense, or maybe it depends.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a difference between being alone and being lonely.
You just stole my next question.
I thought I'd
yes,
segue into that.
My mind.
Yes. So, like you can have, like, your friend be completely single or have a boyfriend, whatever, and have only a few friends, have a quiet life, and not ever feel like they're lonely. They are in their power. They're sure, they're confident, they're happy in what they're doing. So there's no sense of loneliness. And you could be, on the flip side, in a connected marriage with lots of children, lots of extended family, and be completely lonely. And that's kind of how I was in my marriage, completely lonely in it. And I had 3 children. I was busy. And it's really a state of mind. So that's the difference between being lonely and the sense of loneliness. Yeah.
Okay. Talk that through me again, because I'm trying to figure that out. Is being lonely when you're around people, but you're not connected, so you feel by yourself? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, exactly. Okay. Exactly. You what kind of precipitates that loneliness feeling is, there's many things that happen when you get into loneliness, but when you're with a lot of people, it's essentially your mindset around whether or not they value you, whether or not they see you or appreciate you or acknowledge you. And that's something that's within you. It has nothing to do with the people around you. You could be in a shopping mall, you could be at a huge event and feel completely lonely in it because you're not making substantial and really good connections with people.
I literally just had an aha moment right then, because I've been using the wrong word.
Ah,
interesting. Thank you for that clarification. That makes a lot more sense. That made me go, okay, that's what I've been feeling, not that. So that was great.
Yeah. And just to support that, there's tons of studies done on loneliness. And one study done in 2012, which followed 1,600 adults over the age of 60 for 6 years. And out of the 43% of participants who reported chronic loneliness, more than half were married. They were chronically lonely. So there's chronic is like clinical loneliness that leads into a sort of clinical feedback loop of negativity and loneliness over and over again. And that's serious. But studies show you can be connected and be completely lonely.
Well, and also, yeah,
yeah, feel it.
Yeah. And also I think we've, just culturally moved away from real connection as well. Like everything's online and social media, and it's, it's harder to actually get together and connect with people. I think we've somewhat lost that. It's like even in our, in our discrete little families where we're all trying to do it on our own. And that does make you feel disconnected and lonely and unappreciated, even when you are like around people all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And it really is about technology. And again, I was just reading this amazing article in Psychology Today, and they say loneliness has become a problem of epidemic proportions. And they say that from 1985 to 2004, the people who reported loneliness or said they couldn't confide in anybody has tripled. And this is because of technology and our work lives, how we don't even have, most of us are now working outside of the office. There's no big central office that we all have to go to anymore. And of course, the level of divorce and the reassessment of relationships more and more these days from that period of time, for sure.
Yeah, because I know in our sector, Diana, that a lot of people, rather than Shauna's, because Shauna generally naturopaths work in a clinic, or as somebody, there's more than one person, but as an RHN, for example, we tend to work on our own, usually in a home office. And boy, I talk to this about with my students, it can get really lonely quite fast sometimes. So that's why you see a lot of people working in coffee shops, right? They're not there to socialize. They have their computer.
Yeah.
They're there for that buzz and those people that they can people watch, or just to have that that sort of connection, yet they're not connected because they have the computer. And I do that. Like, I live in a village, very, very small village. So there's nowhere that I could go in the village to become connected per se. So that's my go-to, is that when, at least probably twice a week, I think I have to get out of the house. So I will, drive to London or Stratford and go for coffee, just to have that noise and that buzz, and that it makes me more creative sometimes when I have that noise going on around me. And I think you're right, Shauna, when you were saying that lack of connection. I think that people don't make the time to actually go and see friends physically anymore, because they can see them on Facebook, they can call them on FaceTime, or they can send them a quick text. Whereas before, it's, you made not an appointment, but you wrote it down. Okay, I'll see you Tuesday at 2:00 at so-and-so, and you arrived. But now it's too easy to say, oh, something's come up, or, oh, can we reschedule, or that kind of thing. So you're missing that vital connection there as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the lack of phone calling or talking on the phone, right? We're texting, we're messaging.
Who uses their phone as a phone anymore? I do.
Exactly.
But not many other people do. And then I was listening to somebody on a podcast the other day, and they said, okay, so nobody really uses their phone as a phone anymore. And then when they do, somebody said, like, if you pick up the phone, said, why didn't you text me to tell me you were going to call me?
Yeah. Well,
because I'm calling you.
It's so true. It's really ridiculous. I mean, it's not ridiculous because, it works, right? We live these busy lives where texting is awesome. I mean, I check in with my kids by text. It's like amazing technology, instead of like trying to get them on the phone. And, it's just a quick little, hey, how you doing? Or a smiley face, whatever, just checking in. On that level, it's beautiful. But when it comes to loneliness and feeling alone, it is not a good thing at all.
And sorry to interject again, but that just struck me as, when I was growing up, obviously there were no cell phones. There was just a home phone. Mm-hmm. So if you didn't have an answering machine, nobody answered, nobody was home. However, nowadays, when you text somebody or call somebody, they have their phone with them 24/7. And if they don't answer, some people might be saying, why aren't they answering their phone call? Why are they avoiding me? Why aren't they? Because we're too accessible. Whereas before, it's, well, they're not in. I'll wait till they get home. But now it's like, well, it's 5:00 there. Why are they not answering my call? Mm-hmm. It's that mindset again, isn't it? When that can play into your loneliness of being alone, because potentially you have that thought of, they're ignoring me. I'm not important enough for them
Absolutely.
to pick up the phone or answer my text.
Absolutely. And in fact, again, this is a reported study. If you have loneliness, if you have chronic loneliness, so what happens is when you get into chronic, you actually, because you're triggering your sympathetic nervous system and you're in fight and flight, pardon me. Perhaps
It
it's not
always
first
happens
thing
when
in the
you're live.
morning.
Yeah.
You actually start not trusting anymore, right? You're starting to be suspicious of relationships, and you actually talk yourself into thinking, well, if that person's not calling me or responding or not paying attention to me, well, then there's something wrong here, and there's something wrong with me, and now they're the enemy, you know.
Yes.
And that actually, that's the feedback loop I was talking to you about. It's like a vicious cycle. So they actually plummet themselves into more loneliness, depression, and on and on and on it goes, and isolation. So that's, you know, that's a really good point.
Yeah, that all that negative head talk, right? That the
Mhm.
irrational
Yeah.
talking that is just, it doesn't make any sense just because they're not picking up the phone at that point in time or answering your text. They could be actually, they could be doing anything. Just to, yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
interesting.
Mm-hmm,
So I'm assuming a lot of people listening are identifying with this conversation, whether they're in relationships or not. So, what are some of the tools and ideas that you have to shift this mindset around loneliness? I mean, I've got a few thoughts of my own, but I'd love to hear from you first.
yeah, I actually have a whole bunch. So hang on to
Good.
your hats. So the first thing you have to do is when you're starting to feel that sense of a sort of abandonment or, pardon me, you know, disconnect from people and not hearing from them, and you're starting to get into that vicious cycle, you have to stop yourself and reevaluate others' gestures of caring for you. And this could be with your spouse too, right? You like that whole idea of feeling lonely in a relationship. So know that when you feel lonely, you're most likely judging others and loved ones too harshly. So you're reevaluating how they're responding to you, and you're kind of maybe judging them. Like, for example, if a friend hasn't called you in a while, but the last time you spent with that person, say it was like a really good hour conversation where they're really concerned about your emotional state. So you have to remember that time and reevaluate, oh, well, that person really does care for me. They're just maybe really too busy to connect with me. Or if your spouse, for example, you know, hasn't complimented you lately or said a kind word, but he did this week maybe pick up your laundry or pick up a book that you loved, like that's his version of showing that he cares for you. So really evaluating how people are treating you, having a good look at it and what it means to you. Another thing you could do is reach out. So, you know, again, with that same sort of loop, the vicious loop, you've got to take responsibility for your loneliness and start reaching out to people. The onus is on you. So before you get into that negative self-sabotaging sort of mindset around whether or not they care for you or whether or not they want to connect with you, you take the first step in trying to connect with somebody. Reach out to people. So I would automatically, when I'm in conversation with a client or someone who's going through this, I challenge them, reach out to 3 people today that you haven't in a long time and see how that goes. Another thing you can do is revisit in your mind the good times that you had with that person, where you went, what you did. Remember how amazing it was, whether you went to the movies on a regular basis, whatever you did that you're no longer doing that makes you feel sad that you've disconnected with that person. Could be, like I said, going to the movies, going for a coffee every week, whatever it is. Just remember that time and make a point of trying to reignite that with that person and reconnect, of course. So reconnection. So that's such a broad term. Start doing things together. So instead of just having a conversation, make an effort to do actual activities together. For example, invite a friend over and cook a meal together. That's a perfect way of rebonding with somebody and establishing a real quality connection. Say your spouse likes a particular show, or your partner likes to do, play baseball or one of those things. Make an effort to do that thing with them. And that way, again, quality connection will reform. Another thing that you could do is reframe. So again, reframe that mindset. So the longer you know somebody, the more you tend to make the assumption that you know what they're thinking about, but that's never true. At any point, you don't know what they're thinking about. You don't know how they're processing information at any time. I was married for 20 years. You would think you would know somebody after 20 years. Absolutely not. He did not reveal a lot of himself. So change the perspective, like put yourself in their shoes. Maybe they're too busy. Maybe they're overwhelmed with their new job, whatever it is. See things from their perspective. So those are some tips you can do. Again, just to recap, just make the effort, reframe the way you're seeing the scenario, reconnect, really try to reconnect in a quality way, not just a conversation, like do something together, and just reevaluate how they're treating you, and really try to pinpoint where the loneliness is coming from, because it might not be what they're actually doing. It could be just how you're perceiving it.
Now, is that different from changing your energy? Is that more of a mindset?
Well, mindset is energy.
Okay.
It kind of starts with a thought, and that's the energy. Same thing.
So, for example, say you're in a relationship that you feel the loneliness in it, and you're out, you're done. It just hasn't come to fruition yet. How do you sort of, for the women out there who are living that because they, for one reason or another, they can't move out, they can't physically separate themselves. How do they cope with, deal with, whatever the term is, the loneliness that they're feeling in the interim while they're still in that situation?
Yeah. So you're saying they're in transition of separating from their spouse. Yeah. That's a tricky period, because you're kind of in this purgatory. So this is where that book, The Red Tank, comes in. You really need to reach out to your support network. Reach out to your friends who are going to support you through this transition. Because as you're separating from your spouse, so it's not about the connection with your spouse anymore. You're disconnecting from them. So now you need to pump up your connection with your girlfriends, your priest, your advisors, your therapist. Do what you can to now start creating your support network outside of that relationship.
All right. So it's creating that tribe. You're creating your own tribe now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This is the opportunity now to really step up those connections and really reconnect on a real soul level. This is the time, because listen, even though we're all going through our own busy, crazy worlds, the one thing that is so common and that we all know, and that's loneliness and sense of abandonment. We all have that personal experience with it, and we all can relate. So if you go to your friend and say, hey, I'm having such a hard time, would you please check in with me once a day just to make sure I'm okay? I would really appreciate that. You know what? That friend will call you every morning at whatever time you want, just to check in, just a quick check in, or once a week. Let's have a tea. Let's have a 2-hour real good connection coffee and talk about a few things.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I agree that. I think that applies to all of us. Like that advice is, excellent, because we're all going to go through ups and downs in our lives, whether it's separation or ailing parents or job changes or things like that. Like there's going to be time where we need that support. And I don't think enough of us have that kind of solid support network to draw on. And yeah. I can speak from my own experience. My struggle is not so much relationship wise right now, but I found myself, working really, really hard and seeing countless patients every day. So I talk to people and I connect with people every day, but it's in a different role. It's in a role that is, a lot of energy out. And there's a boundary between my personal life and what I can share. So that also creates quite a lot of loneliness too, right? Of having nobody who you can actually fully let the guard down with. But at the same time, connecting all day. So at the end of the day, it's very easy to just go home and try to just shut it down. I don't want to talk to anyone anymore. But you do that for enough days, enough weeks, enough years, you end up extremely lonely. There's and you don't, because I haven't nurtured the relationships and the friendships. There wasn't much to rely on. So, I mean, I think we can all put ourselves into that situation from different vantage points.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a friend of mine who is also a therapist, she sees patients all day long, all day long. She's busy, busy, busy. But she actually told me the other day that, she really doesn't connect with anybody because she's a therapist. That's a completely different role. And then in the evening when she's exhausted, all she can do is be by herself, recharge her energy. And she lives a very lonely life. Although it's active, she sees lots of people. So you're right. It really does apply to so many other realms. It doesn't matter what you're doing, what type of relationship you're in. Loneliness is a mindset, and it can affect everybody.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think particularly around the perimenopause, menopause phase, we can, or that's when, I don't want to call it addictions, but that's when you're sort of moving towards using food or using alcohol to numb that rather than reaching out, because it's easier, right? It's more accessible. Nobody's going to judge you.
Yeah.
It is what it is. You can do it behind closed doors, so nobody really has to know that you're lonely. So you just sort of push all those emotions down. So that's something that we see a lot of. So, which makes me excited that, you're doing what you do in this field to know that there is another way to, to cope with this loneliness and being alone.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. I mean, it is true. This period of our lives is really essential, as I was saying at the beginning, and it can bring on so much loneliness. But at the end of the day, you have to accept that this is just a period of our lives that we're going through. And we can decide how we want to go through it. Just like a breakup or divorce or anything like that, we get to decide how we manage through it. And I see it a lot as well. Eating and using food to self-medicate, big time. And wine. Oh my gosh, the wine.
Yes.
The wine or liquid courage, right?
Yeah.
And that's a temporary fix that just isolates you even more, because then you end up feeling horrible physically after it. So it's, again, just retraining behaviors. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, when you start to pack on the pounds as well. And then, physically you're not happy with it. And it's just a whole, it's when we're just a fairground ride. You're just going up and down and round and up and down and round until, people like you that we highlight people like you who are doing something really positive in this field, so that, again, we can refer people to you who are going through this. And it doesn't have to fall back on, okay, well, I'm just going to drown my loneliness in food or alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Just to put things in perspective, it's a very serious condition, this period of time. And we talk about hormones and all of that and the anxiety that comes with it. But 40% of adults with chronic loneliness, really 40%, it shows that there's in 40% of adults, chronic loneliness can lead to immune system function, being depressed. It boosts inflammation. It significantly raises your risk of cardiovascular disease. You can become clinically depressed. They say that it's even more dangerous than smoking or obesity. That's how serious it is. And it really needs to be taken seriously. If you're feeling loneliness, that's when you need to really deal with all the behaviors that come with it, because it affects everything in our lives on so many levels that we've just spoken about, and it can again trap us in that loop of misperception or distorted perception over whether people care for us. So getting the help you need, doing the simple things that I suggested here is essential to get you out of it. And if you need help, you obviously reach out to, your friends or any professional that you know who's doing work in this field. Your therapist is, of course, your also trusted advisor. I work with therapists all the time because that's also essential in digging deep into the root cause of your emotional distress around loneliness. But sometimes it's just as simple as picking up a phone and reaching out to a friend. And that could
actually picking up a phone. We talked about that before.
Yeah. Not a text.
Yeah, actually picking up a phone. It's time we get back to that. I'm finding more and more people are doing that. I was texting a friend the other day and she just picked up the phone right away and you knew that I was there. It's like, oh, I was like so surprised.
I know. It's like, oh my gosh,
time to talk to me. And we were talking for an hour.
Wow.
And it was awesome. It was awesome. Totally awesome.
And I mean, again, you were saying, you're talking about technology. One of the good things about technology is, yes, we can talk on the phone, but then there's things like this, the Zoom, the Skype, this FaceTime, where you can actually see that person, see their expression. So it's kind of like an enhanced phone call. Mm-hmm. But it's certainly, when you haven't spoken to somebody for a while, it's certainly better than sort of sending texts back and forth when you know that person's there because they're texting.
Yeah.
So just pick up the phone.
Yeah.
I'm right here. I can't type that fast.
I actually do that. It's so interesting. Yeah, we talk about technology being the cause of loneliness, but you're so right. I mean, it could actually enhance the reverse too. When we're talking on the phone, I have a son who's in Vancouver, and when we connect, I insist that we go on WhatsApp and we talk face to face, or on Facebook Messenger. Now you can video call each other. It's free. There's no more long distance charges, people.
Yeah.
So use that technology, absolutely, because it does bring on the same types of emotions. It really does trigger the same chemical reaction of oxytocin when you're seeing their face and their expression, more so than just hearing their voice. So it is a much more efficient way of connecting with somebody who you haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have any more questions, Shauna?
No, I just wanted to, to sort of taper off here. Do you have any more tips if somebody's really struggling with connection? So it seems like that's, the direction we're going is how do we alleviate the loneliness is to create more connection in our lives. But some people do end up very distant from that, where they're at a point where they're even struggling to pick up the phone. Yeah. What are some other ways of, reaching out or getting the support that you need if you're really in a hard state right now?
Yeah, well, that's a tricky one, but a very serious one. And that's when I suggest going to your local church. If you are somebody who goes to church, speak to your pastor, speak to your congregation, people in there, and tell them what you're going through. There's some amazing support networks out there. If you can't pick up a phone and you feel like you've burned bridges and you're really stuck in that vicious cycle of, oh my God, I can't call that person because it's been so long, and I don't think they like me anymore. Meetup groups. Meetup groups are great. Again, go online, technology, how it can benefit, and check out a meetup group and just go there. Most of these meetup groups are free, and they connect, at your local bar, at your local library, or some event, and just start fresh. Start making new connections, and then also, if you can't even do that, this is a time to exercise self-compassion and self-care. This is the time for you to really start nurturing yourself and taking your feelings seriously. So you can do that by spending a day with yourself. making it your day with yourself, your fun day with yourself. List all the things you'd want to do that you haven't done for yourself. Take a bath, go for a long walk, go to that art gallery you've been thinking about. Go, we have these great city bikes in Toronto, and we can just rent it for the day for like a couple of bucks. Get one of those, ride around, explore a new neighborhood. I mean, make your event with yourself like a date. Take it seriously that you need to be with yourself and have fun with yourself exploring. Go for a coffee in a new cafe that you've been hearing about. Go see a movie. I know that's a lonely thing to do, but if you're sort of stuck in that loop and you're just sitting in your home and you don't know what to do, become your own best friend again, and self-care and self-nurture. But if you are that type of person who is just kind of like, oh yeah, I need to start taking responsibility, and you see that, give yourself a challenge. Call 3 people that you haven't spoken to in a while. Just pick up the phone. Pick up the phone. Leave them a message if they don't call. At least you've done that. At least you're putting into action something that will lead you towards a connection. And that'll shift things for you. You'll be able to shift your feeling of loneliness in that moment.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And that actually brings up a really good point that you were saying before, is if you live in the Toronto area or close enough to get in, you actually run some events and some meetup groups. So if you could tell us a little bit more about that, and we'll put it in the show notes too, but just give us a little bit more information on your love lessons and your sharing circle, that would be great.
Awesome. Thanks, Maggie. Yeah, I hold a free meetup every Wednesday night at a restaurant called Impact Kitchen on King Street East from 7 p.m. till 9 p.m. And it's a sharing circle. So, I speak to a lot of people who are going through separation, divorce, breakup, various stages, even just friendship breakups and things that have traumatized, have traumatized them. And we get to talk about what's come up for us, and every week we have a new theme that we talk about. And last week we talked about loss. So loss during the transition, what we lost, and then what was the opportunity to gain, of course. It was a great conversation. So that's absolutely one way you can connect with me at any time. And I'm on Meetup, so you could just go onto the Meetup site and just Google sharing circle, and you'll see Wednesday sharing circle, and my event will come up.
And then your love lessons workshop.
Yeah. So I've been doing love lessons workshops. So I'm conducting another. It's a 1-day workshop on Saturday, April 21st. And this is a heart healing workshop. So again, it's all about breaking free from old love patterns, looking at our foundations that just aren't working for us anymore, creating a healthy body, healthy mind around it, and a healthy soul love resonance. And I talk about Tantra, we do meditations, and you have a workbook, so you can actually use the tools and continue to experience the healing that the workshop gives you.
Yeah, and the same thing that you were saying, Shauna, that, if for more sort of tips on or more actions, what to do if you don't know anybody and you've been in that situation for a while and you've lost connection with people, a workshop like yours would be great to go to, because it's focused on a certain topic. So likely the people that are going have experienced or are experiencing the same kind of things. So you sort of automatically have that bond. So you don't have to sort of explain yourself. You can sort of just go there and just experience it and know that there are other people going through the same thing, which can be very comforting, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we all go through these stages at various times in our lives. So yeah, reaching out to people who are going through the same thing really, really brings you connected into a connected environment. And on one level, you do form amazing relationships from these types of workshops, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And we'll also put in the show notes your Facebook group too, because again, that's another easy way for people to reach out to you and connect with you and the online community. So again, if this is sort of their first step into this, they can do it in a comfortable environment. They can connect with you at home, not your home, their home.
Yeah. Yeah. I connect in our private Facebook group called My Life Crush every day. So it's all about inspiring you and trying to give you the tools that you need to work through whatever the transition is, but mostly the breakup transition. And you can find all this information on mylifecrush.com, my website as well. And when you go onto my website, I also have a free guide for anybody who's interested. You just have to click on the Start Here button, and you get a free guide that I've compiled that gives you the starting steps to your new life and how you can get that motion of transition in place.
Thank you. That sounds wonderful. I'm so grateful for all of these resources for our listeners today because, again, I'm sure there's a few people listening who need some support right now. And it's great to know that there are people like you out there who are accessible and easy to reach for some extra direction and some, loving guidance.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really honored and thrilled to be reaching out to your community and be part of this podcast. I think what you're doing is amazing. You guys are fantastic. And it's so important to have this. I mean, we need to build our tribe. That's the key. We are consciously needing to build our tribe and to support each other. And it's wonderful. So thank you for all you do as well.
Well, I thank whatever for Shauna every day because, we created this together and, she's amazing. She is such a wealth of knowledge and she's part of my tribe. And, I rely on her for a lot of things. So whatever, the things that we're talking about today and the steps forward, that's what I have with Shauna. So I'm extremely lucky. And I had that with you as well, Diana. But we are trying to, build this bigger community, this, as you say, this tribe, that women feel comfortable to talk to us, message us, and get their questions answered, which, as we've talked about before, it's not always accessible, or they don't know the questions to ask. So, but I think that's it for this week's show. Thank you so much for joining us, Diana. It's been amazing.
You're very, very welcome. It's been my honor. Thank you so much, ladies.
And it's great to see you again, Shauna, too.
Yeah, thank you. This was an awesome discussion. I came in not knowing what to expect and learned a ton, like usual.
Excellent. So as usual, if you want to, you can subscribe to our podcast. That would be amazing. I think this week we're probably going to hit our 5,000 downloads. So that's something to really celebrate. We've only been on the air since November. So our tribe is growing every day and they are amazing. So if you know of a woman who, or some friends who would find this interesting, please share our podcast with them and come and like us on YouTube and watch our videos so that we can be seen by more people. So we will see you again next week. And again, thank you so much, Diana. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.